On behalf of Alzheimer's Australia Queensland, I'd like to welcome you all today and our very special guest speaker, Ita Buttrose. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you very much.
Can you advise what is being done to provide better information on your services and support to the medical profession for younger onset dementia patients?
Well, we're constantly reminding doctors of the incidence of younger onset dementia, and we do occasionally have sessions with doctors, but I guess in their defence, they are fairly busy people and they get bombarded with a lot of material, and often they don't read everything that crosses their desk. We are very conscious of the needs of people with younger onset dementia. We know the difficulty of getting a diagnosis. We know that doctors still don't think of dementia as something that affects younger people, but those of you who have the diagnosis and those of us at Alzheimer's Australia know very well that it does. We were talking about it. We had a lunch a bit earlier with some of the principal supporters of Alzheimer's Australia Queensland just earlier today. And there were some people there with younger onset dementia, and of course they were talking about that really important issue that affects anyone with that diagnosis, the care facilities. Only aged care is available, and that is totally unacceptable. And it's one of the reasons that we're pushing very hard now for a national dementia strategy, which we do not have in Australia. And given the caseload of all dementias, plus the cost to the economy, we believe it's absolutely essential that the government come forward with a strategy, and that strategy has to include a plan for better care for people with younger onset dementia. Yes, thank you. Shall I tell you a bit about, do you know why I work for Alzheimer's Australia? You probably, no you don't. My father had vascular dementia, and he was diagnosed when he was around about 84. And as you know, it's the second most common dementia after Alzheimer's disease.
So where do we get the care? If we live by ourselves, we've got to cope by ourselves. Where do we get the break? I mean, they talk about the carers, and that's fine, but there's two people living in that household. I don't. I have to live with my own nightmare myself.
Well, I might ask Victoria, is there somebody with a bit more specific about what you're doing up here in Queensland? Come up here.
I come from the Gold Coast.
Gold Coast, yes.
Christine, you raise a really, really important point, and we touched on it at lunchtime, the importance for appropriate and quality respite services for people that are under 65 particularly. It's a big gap in the sector and the community. We are hoping that the NDIS might start addressing the funding for that moving forward. The completeness of the application of that funding is still a little way off. It'll be into 2018 before we know the full impact of that, but we're hoping that clients might be able to use their funding through the NDIS to access those types of respite services.
We had a summit, we had a summit on younger onset dementia in Melbourne about, I think, 2012. And I must say that was very helpful in bringing to community and some of the politicians and some of the health professionals the impact of younger onset dementia. It seems to me, Vicky, that maybe it's time we had another one.
Yeah. Do you know anything about the dementia care in Holland?
Dementia care in Holland? Do you mean the home, the village? Yes, Hogswort. It's like Hogswort, isn't it? It's like Harry Potter. Yes, I do, and he's been out here. One of the founders of that company has been out here. We have a couple of similar places in Australia like that now. Do you know about this village? This is a village that they've built, and it's a complete village, but it's for only people with dementia. And everything's there, supermarkets, cafes and so on, and apartments and so on, but you can't leave it. I mean, there are streets, it just looks like a village, except of course it's got gates around it, so you can't go out. It's got the lot, and it's really a credible breakthrough.
Are they contemplating having something like that in Australia?
He's been out here talking about it, yes. But I've been talking with Glenn Rees, who used to be the CEO, the national CEO, and he's now chair of ADI, and he's been looking at some of the things that are happening here in Australia, and he says that there's a couple of good places that are now starting up in South Australia, we mentioned, and there's also one in Sydney somewhere. Similar principles, similar principles to the Dutch one.
Firstly, with regard to the name residential aged care, does the word aged need to be included in that? Also, if I may add, again, the language of removing the word facility. It's their home, it's a community. John and I hope...
It's interesting you should raise that. I was speaking at, I don't know what I was speaking at, some sort of retirement village complex, and they were having this debate about names and so on. And I said, well, why do you have to say it's retirement anything? Why don't you just call it Field of Flowers or, you know, Petunia Farm? It doesn't have, I agree with you. It's same with the aged care facilities. Why call them that? Just call them some lovely name.